Have you heard of the Kumite?
Did you say Kumite?
Uh-huh, the Kumite.
With Mortal Kombat 1, a lot of people are saying that the series took a step backwards from a competitive perspective. And the funny thing about it is Mortal Kombat always outsells Street Fighter and Tekken.
Shock value.
Yeah, because I think what happens with Mortal Kombat is that a lot of people buy the game and they'll play through the story mode, which the recent Mortal Kombat games have really good story modes. They'll play through that. They'll play a little bit with their friends. They'll learn the fatalities. They'll do them all. They'll see them all. And then they kind of put it down and they never really touch it again. Whereas Street Fighter, on the other hand, is a much more competitive game where, you know, it has its own story mode, and Street Fighter 6 actually has a great single player mode. It's a lot different from what Mortal Kombat does, but the Street Fighter single player is designed to teach you how to play fighting games, like the real ins and outs of playing fighting games. So you're not just mashing buttons and getting your ass kicked. You're understanding.
That's exactly what I did last week.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm a newbie still, but I know pushing the buttons and trying to do some of the old maneuver, like the uppercut from Ken and Ryu. It's got that same motion that you would do with your thumb on the key of the pad, you know. And I remember little things about Street Fighter back in the day. I had my favorite character, of course, and then I played it like last week, Street Fighter 6 with you, and I was like, this is nothing near what I'm used to. Not just the graphic side of things, but the gameplay itself. It's advanced.
It's advanced, but Street Fighter, especially Street Fighter 6, has really gone out of their way to simplify the game and make it more inviting to new players. That's one of the things that they did. They created a modern control scheme where you can just push one button to do a special move, and it assists you with doing combos, and it's designed to help people who don't play a lot of fighting games be able to get in and actually do competitive things against players who have been playing Street Fighter for a long time. And it helps them out, but at the same time, what happens is, you know, making all the special moves, making the combos and stuff easier, you really start to have to learn the actual ins and outs of playing a fighting game. Like, you have to start to understand the neutral game. You have to start to understand things like frame data, what startup and recovery is, and just you really have to understand the strategy behind the fighting game. It's not just jumping around and hitting special moves all the time. And Street Fighter actually does a great job of teaching that as well.
Do you think you'd have a degree by now in game college?
But
you want
again,
to call that, because you totally schooled me on another aspect of looking that far deep into it. Here I am pushing buttons, and the combo thing is new. I don't remember the original Street Fighter having combos.
Oh yeah, Street Fighter 2 was one of the first games to really introduce a combo
But not
system.
the first Street Fighter.
Well, the first Street Fighter, nobody played that. The first Street Fighter that you remember is Street Fighter 2.
Okay.
Because the very first Street Fighter, you couldn't pick your character. Like, who's the first Street Fighter character that you think of?
Well, my character, my go-to, and I'll probably pronounce his name wrong, but is it Sagat? Sagat?
Sagat.
Okay.
Okay, Sagat wasn't playable in Street Fighter 1.
Was he a boss?
He was the boss in Street Fighter 1.
Really?
Yeah.
So the
Bison wasn't introduced until Street Fighter 2.
So the first one was not two people fighting each other. It was just you going through and fighting different bosses.
Two people could fight each other, but it was only Ken and Ryu.
Oh, yeah, that sucks.
In Street Fighter 1.
It's basically the same character fighting each other.
Yeah, that's
what is the difference between the two guys? Blonde and brown hair? They have the same moves.
Oh, you want to get started on that?
Maybe in another session, but
Ken and Ryu are nothing alike.
Really?
At all. Now, in the very first Street Fighter, they were exactly the same.
See, that's all I have to go by. And even Street Fighter 2, were they damn near the same person?
In the first version of Street Fighter 2, they were.
Okay.
And then when Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition came out, that's when they started to separate.
Give me the Cliff Notes version of what makes them different.
Okay.
Now, I mean, the version of like Street Fighter 6.
Okay, Ryu is fundamental character. He doesn't do anything particularly special. He's not particularly strong, particularly weak. What he's good for, he's a good beginner character. His combos are not that hard to do. And what he's really good at is knocking the other character down and really putting pressure from that perspective and capitalizing on your opponent's mistakes.
Okay.
Ken, on the other hand, is hyper aggressive. His moves are doing a whole bunch of damage at once and really
Are they
pushing.
more complex,
Are they more complex?
the moves, compared to Ryu?
Their specials are essentially the same. I mean, they have different effects, but they're essentially the same. But it's more about their normal moves and the types of combos that they put together. And yeah, Ken is all about pressure, 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 attack, attack, attack. And the problem with Ken is that his moves are really strong and overwhelming, but he also opens up and leaves himself vulnerable a lot. And that's kind of
Is he a risk taker compared to
Ryu, yes.
Yeah.
Ryu is more.
Ryu? Okay,
He's more of a
Said that wrong.
counter striker.
got you.
And you have to learn to play them that way when you're playing the game. Like, you cannot pick
It's
up Ken and
Totally
try to.
different dynamic you're introducing to this. Like, you're dissecting the shit out of this.
Yeah. You cannot pick up Ken and try to do the things that you would do with Ryu,
Okay.
and vice versa. You will just get slaughtered if you try that.
Well, you've definitely given me some information to chew on because, like I said, I'm interested making that investment pretty soon. And yeah, I'm definitely thinking about doing that. So,
And that's also one of the things that really separates Street Fighter from Mortal Kombat is that each character in the game is unique. They have their moveset, they have their style. It's not just everyone's doing the same thing except they have different special moves. It's not that at all. It's when you pick up a new character in Street Fighter, you have to learn the ins and outs of that character. Like if you play with a guy like Zangief, the wrestler, you have to learn what he's good at and what he's bad at. And it's different from everybody else. His entire game is he has to find a way to get close to you no matter what. That's all you
there's
do.
no long game involved whatsoever.
Well, it is a long game. It's a strategy is he has to get in, and the other guy knows that. He
Yeah.
knows that whatever he does, he has to keep you at a distance because if you get close, if you touch him 4 times, you're dead.
Is there an Achilles heel per se for each character? Like they just don't match up well?
No, actually, that's another great thing about the Street Fighter series is that everyone's balanced. I mean, they have their strengths and weaknesses. Now, if you go at the highest level of playing, where slight differences in the character do make some guys weaker than others, like in Street Fighter 6, I think one of the weakest characters is a new one named Lily. And basically, she's kind of the female version of T-Hawk from the Street Fighter 2 series. And, you
Was
know,
he the dude that had hatchets? And no, maybe it's a different game.
you're
But I'm-
thinking about Nightwolf from Mortal Kombat.
okay,
But they're both
the
Indians.
Mohawk.
Yeah. But, you know, the differences are very, very slight. It's really like, you know, you just pick your favorite character and your favorite fighting style, and you can learn how to use them against
My favorite character wasn't in Street Fighter 6, and that broke my heart. So
Sagat.
yeah, I don't know. I've always been intrigued by that fighting style, so I was like, man, I just thought it was just too cool, and he was long, and yeah, I mean,
Well, the cool thing about video games today is that he may be added later on. He may be added, well, they've already announced the new characters that are coming up this year. So it'll be a pretty long time before you see Sagat again. But there are some characters out there that are pretty comparable. The long reach striker. I'm trying to think of one right now. Maybe there isn't a guy that really resembles Sagat right now.
yeah,
And maybe, you know, I'll come up with 3 of them later on. Because, you know, one of the criticisms right now about Street Fighter 6 is that they brought back too many of the old characters. Like Honda and Dalsum, that are, a lot of people say they're only in the game because they're classic characters, but no one actually likes them.
man, I tell you what, dude, you've given me a totally new perspective on making a decision. I think I'm gonna pull the trigger as soon as I can and start with the basics.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
if you want to jump on PlayStation, if you want to jump on Street Fighter, I mean, I will gladly play with you in Street Fighter. I mean, we can go to training rooms and
Definitely something to
Yeah.
look forward to, man. I appreciate the assistant.